everybody. My name is Sky. This is Chantel. This is the Women Healing Naturally podcast. And we have another topic for you this week. And I think it's a very important one. It is hydration. Hey, Chantel.
Hi, my darling. How are you?
I am good. I am good.
Awesome.
So
I'm
let's get
looking
into
forward to this.
Look, me too. I think, especially, and I always refer to my background just because that's my expertise, is I never think how it is a priority ever. But then when you go to hospital, the first thing they put in is usually a line of fluid, and that isn't even just water, right? It's electrolytes, bicarb electrolytes. So it's obviously important. It's just when you go to a doctor or there's some sort of an emergency in your system and you once again go to a health practitioner, it's not really put forward. What's your take on the hydration?
Well, I mean, we had an episode where we talked about electrolytes. So clearly, we really focused on how important that is, the balance of these minerals that are into the body. Hydration is incredibly important. Actually, I feel that a lot of the ailments that people have could even be resolved just by having more hydration in the body before we look at anything else. So my questions to my patients is always like, do you drink enough water? Or do you take some green juices? Or do you drink coconut water? Do you eat enough raw food? And like salads, not dehydrated raw food,
Yeah.
and fruit. And that's my first question, because a lot of people are just generally dehydrated because they eat too many things that are super dry, incredibly high in sodium, which obviously dehydrates you. Now, the funny part with sodium is that it's actually very important in hydration as well, and we can talk about it in a minute. But I'm talking about more like processed foods and very like sugary food. So food that eventually will dehydrate your cells and thicken your blood. So it's really, really important to be hydrated for sure.
Yeah, of course. I actually think so going onto the raw foods, I ate primarily just off the shelf. So everything was very hydrated. I got well very quickly. But as things came up along the way, what was really obvious is if I ordered a case of coconut water, I could literally eradicate very quickly almost any symptom that came up. We're not talking about having I guess I even could have tried it if I got a flu or something, but that's rare for me. I'm talking about especially a histamine reaction, which could be headaches, gut aches, rashes, irritability, anxiety, even dissociated and PTSD. There's so many symptoms. I would order 9, that's about 3 liters, and over the day, as I consumed it by the night, nothing wrong. And I
Amazing.
think how simple is that? Yet I needed all these 60 surgeries, I needed all these specialists. And yes, people can need doctors, but why is this like not even a topic?
Yeah, I think we are in a medical system in the allopathic world where we look at symptoms and we try to stop the symptoms because they're very, for the right reasons too. I mean, I'm not blaming doctors because sometimes they are so debilitating for the patients that you need to. And I guess the bigger picture would be, what if we taught doctors to look at the overall body as an entire system and not just their specialty, so not that just the organ, and focusing on relieving the symptoms from that part of the body they're specialists in, and actually think, where does that come from? Can we support this organ by looking at another system, another organ? And that we don't have yet. We don't really have it. I know that there are many functional medical doctors that are trying to do that. And, the people that have always done that are the naturopath, because we actually learn to find the root cause and not actually just look at the symptoms. But even in naturopathy now, we are we are looking at they are teaching naturopathy like they do allopathy in many universities, which is why many countries are eradicating naturopathic schools and trying to bring the naturopathy degrees into universities at par with with allopathic doctors, allopathic or medical degrees, which it's very interesting to see happening, because when you work in a naturopathic school, there is such a big array of things, and we're not taught to actually prescribe medication or take people off medication. What we are looking at is always like, if there is a an interaction with something like a herb that we would use, or flower essence or whatever it is that the practice is, but we don't prescribe or take people off medication. So for naturopathy, if it loses the core of looking at the symptoms, sorry, the actual core root cause, instead of looking at symptoms, we might actually end up having naturopaths that look at symptoms. So they treat people just the way that allopathic doctors would. So you would go in and they would try and fix this, and then it doesn't work. Let's fix another thing, and then trying to bring it all together. Um, for you, obviously, it was a very strong endocrine issue that you had. That's really where it started, and even the endocrinologist didn't have all the answers. But like, if you think about it, the endocrine system for you was so sensitive, and something was definitely happening that it affected your digestive system, it affected your reproductive system, of course. It affected your adrenals. I mean, your immune system. It affected everything, right?
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand, because my case seems so huge, is it isn't really. It was that rare congenital disease which threw, as you said, the whole endocrine system out. But the one thing I don't know whether people understand about what happened to me, and because we're in natural health now, is it's the only thing I've ever had where, as time went on, no matter what they did, it got worse. So when they fixed my stomach, it was huge. I almost lost my life. But even though for years after they have to keep looking inside, nothing came up again. You fix it and you move on. This, no matter what they did, it was like this steep decline. And I think that's why I thought my life would end. And I don't think everybody is in this boat. And it almost makes me wonder, because and a lot of people listening would be very, very sick. And what I believe happened to me is, if you presented me with this idea that hydration could fix my system, I was so indoctrinated that I believed I needed more. Like, it was impossible. Like, it was beyond impossible that somebody as sick as me could use at this stage, as you get that sick, natural healing fruit, which is water and electrolytes, greens, hydration. Even, it's come to me also that when I'd come out of surgery, I'd say, if you double bag me with fluids, I'll need less painkillers. Like, I knew these things, but never thought about what it could actually do. And is it possible, in your thoughts, that I know it's not possible right now the way the system is, that people could go in very sick, and the first line, instead of and I'm talking about chronic illness, that they go in and have these like hydro infusions, as well as coconut water, as well as green juice, as well as, I think there's two things here, because people say they take electrolytes, right, in a packet, but the way the electricity on a spiritual level is different, right? And we're talking about people who are very sick, in fear, is what heals me. Not, you could give me all these packets and I would only get to a certain level. I need coconut water, green juice, celery, watery food to get to this exponential healing. But do you think it's possible that it could be where you have these chronic illnesses and people are booked in for just fluids to get some level of healing? Is that something that's possible?
I think it would be really worth trying. I think it would be definitely improve a lot of things. Now, drinking coconut water wouldn't, diminish the effects of a bad diet. That would mean really educating people and getting them on a hydrating diet. Fruit,
Yeah.
raw vegetables, like the cucumbers. Cucumber is actually a fruit, really. So the culinary fruits, full of water. That, I think, honestly, it would have a massive impact, very, very big. Most people are dehydrated, whether they like to say it or not, and drinking just water might not be enough. So it's very important to probably look at that. But the interesting part is that, yeah, we don't have a system that understands this, like the simplicity of it, simplicity of just hydrating first and then seeing what's going on. Um, I don't know. It doesn't make money, that's for sure, right? It doesn't make money for the system.
True. I had a friend who had lupus, and she was actually in Bali, and I think she had this massive flare. And while they were waiting to see a doctor, they just started infusing fluids. And I mean, obviously, there's a humidity change. She's travelled, and she swears and her boyfriend swears she's never felt as good, you know. And these things, I feel we could talk about the medical implications, but what are the implications of people learning themselves? Because even, you know, like I had these endocrine problems, and you get, you know, you start to say my shoulder is hurting as well. And they say, oh, you need to go back to your GP. It is unrelated. And I think we're getting further into that because these doctors are going, there's more they've learned, you know, there's better technology. So they're getting even more separated. It's like this part where we have to go, okay. And this girl did remember this. I'm not sure what she did afterwards, but how do I get more fluids? How do I look after myself? And yes, I can use these drugs, but maybe I need to also do natural healing. How do we, you know, get to that spot where people actually have to see themselves? Because every doctor, and not so much naturopaths, but every doctor is getting further away from the whole, right?
Yeah, it is. Okay, first of all, I think people need to understand this. You
Yeah.
have to have control and agency of your health, because what you are learning, a lot of doctors don't even know. So if you want to be healthy, you would have access to information. You can research it. You can look at the studies. You can actually probably know more than your doctor at some point. Normally, for a study to be well accepted by the medical industry, and then for the training to happen for doctors, actually, this is a very good question for you. How long do you think that takes?
What, the training for doctors?
So between starting a study, finishing the study, and then for
Oh,
the doctor to be trained.
7 years, isn't it?
17.
No, is it 17? Are you serious? Even for
I'm serious.
drug trials?
I don't know about drug. Yeah, even for drug trials, but I don't. Yes, also for drug trials. Depends on the. This is why COVID was such a big thing. I don't know if we can say that, because everything was like rushed through, and then you know, we didn't have any time really to see what was going on with that. But yeah, it takes 17 years. That's why doctors are not trained, because by the time they get trained, a whole generation of people have gone through everything. Um, so it's really that bad, and this is particularly important, present, and relevant for women's health.
And I must say, knowing what I know now and eating a water-rich diet, the one thing that throws my hydration out, which inevitably makes me sicker, is pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah,
If I was
yeah,
to
the
say
hydration.
something that was to change the balance very quickly,
Yeah,
exponentially, it's pharmaceutical drugs. So while we're trying to, and that's why I always say to people is, when I first went raw vegan, I was like, this is the way, this is the cure. Like, you don't need doctors and all of that. And I don't know whether I ever hated doctors. I just respected where I got well, and that was part of my journey. But you don't need them. And then I realized, like, I had to accept, and this is for everything, including the alcohol conversation, is where does this sit? Because everything can be good or bad. And if I break a leg, and I broke my toe, thank God a doctor could have an x-ray and see it. You know, if a family member has a heart attack, I want that care. And for me, that is what a doctor is. It is like that top acute level. And if you've got chronic illness, you would know. I was there. You take the folder into a doctor, like, you know it better. You can recite all of these things, all of these diagnoses, and the diagnoses pile up. You know more than them. But I think you have to remember that as a whole, right? So,
absolutely. And this is really particularly important when I work with women, because especially in our transitions through perimenopause to postmenopause, a lot of doctors are still not educated about the impact of lowering estrogen into the body and how it can impact every system in the body, because we have estrogen receptors everywhere. So they will dismiss that, the frozen shoulder and be like,
yeah.
wow, go to the, podiatrist, or the whatever you go. Sorry, right now I'm too tired. It's very late here. It's very early for you. We need
Yes,
coffee, both of us.
we're trying to find,
Yeah.
we're trying to
Um,
balance you. Literally
so
balance
sometimes,
when talking about hydration, right?
yeah. And I'm very well hydrated. I drank a lot of fluids today. But yeah, so they will send you to see the orthopedic doctor. That's what I was looking for. Um, they will send you to someone, to a specialist, rather than actually saying, Okay, let's just look at what's happening with your hormones. Why do you have a frozen shoulder? That actually happens through perimenopause a lot. So how do we, support you in that? And there's just no connection there. So women are completely always gaslit because of the issues that we feel that are connected, but somehow that connection is just never supported by the medical system. And and taking medication will dehydrate you. So again, even if you need to take medication, like, what is your lifestyle like? Bringing in hydration is so important, especially because then you also have the liver working extra hard, because now the liver is that chemical factory, right? So everything goes through the liver. All your pharmaceutical will go through the liver. So not being well hydrated is a problem. Then the kidneys are stressed. Not being well hydrated, it's a problem, right? And now everybody is focused on protein, 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 and protein without hydration is the recipe for disaster.
Well, everything acidic is going to need hydration to get out of the system. So you then dehydrate the system. I've spoken before is I will increase protein with a protein powder, and the next day you can see my skin is like when I move my stomach. I think as you age, you see things very quickly. You can see the pull and dehydration on my system. But I think what's really important is we jump to the electrolyte topic just because we think of hydration, many people probably do, as water. But really, I thought about this over the weekend. I would like to say it's balance, because if you put too much water in, you get dehydrated. If you put
Yep.
too much electrolytes in, you get dehydrated. And something that was quite serious was, so when I lost my stomach, they gave me IV fluids for, it was about 3 months, right? And they couldn't put the feeding tube in because there's a heart risk, right? It's all about you getting into the heart because it's like trauma surgery. And the one thing every day they were checking, like it was my life did depend on it, is potassium. Because what is really going to dictate water going in your cells is the potassium and the salt and magnesium and other electrolytes, but there's this balance, right, which is sending it in. So we like to say water, but if someone's like, I'm sick, and just starts drinking water, and it doesn't have your balance, and that's not just an electrolyte packet, right, is you can get yourself really sick. And this is where lifestyle comes in, right?
It is. And actually, you mentioned something about the packets. I wanted to say something earlier, I forgot. But um, these packets for electrolytes, they're great if you're doing sports, you're running a marathon, absolutely. But like, I always think that just like vitamins, try to get the bulk of it into your food before you even rely on things that have been extracted, separated, consolidated together, concentrated together. Because ultimately, hydration to the best level, this is why we really love fruit and we love the vegetables, especially the green leafy ones, the culinary fruit, because the package is what hydrates you, because the balance is already in there. And that's so important, as you said, balancing it out. Nature doesn't make any mistakes when it comes to this. Like, it just packages it for us. When we have the mango, when we have the pineapple, when we have the cucumber, the zucchini, the celery, all the herbs, like, it has that content of water that is so good for us, with all the elements that will hydrate us, a balance of potassium and sodium and calcium and magnesium. Like, you will have all these amazing minerals in there that are in perfect amounts. Um, which is actually why once I had Dr. Furman, actually, I had him on a podcast twice, but the first time Dr. Furman, I asked him what he thought about the celery juice, because that's when it actually really started trending. Um, and he had a very different opinion. He said that we shouldn't flood our body with sodium first thing in the morning. And I left a little bit, well, I didn't agree with it, but I left a little bit wondering why even doctors that are well educated in nutrition would think that the sodium in your celery would be the same as table salt. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not the same. That sodium in your celery, your body knows exactly what to do with it. It comes with hydration, it comes with other minerals. Like, why would we not want to have it?
So also, that's so interesting you said that, because a lot of people, when I had a sodium deficiency, I was having some salt water on my food because I wasn't being able to get in the salt yet. A lot of people say, I eat tomato and celery and that's enough. And I was doing that. And I actually talked to ChatGTP. You need 5 heads of celery to accumulate 1 teaspoon of sodium. So how much sodium does Dr. Furman think people are waking up and having? But this also brings me back to the availability and the usability of something which is not setting off the immune system. So I know, and I'm so sensitive, you put salt in my system, it's tipping. Like it's literally being thrown one way or the other. It's better for me to have a tiny little bit with lots of water. Like that's the strong effect. It's drug-like. This, as you said, and to me this is so hard for people to understand, this is this looking after yourself, this spiritual way that we should be putting these whole foods, or in this case it's very hard to get this liquid in without a juicer, is the body, it feels for me, the reason I don't get these mast cell, in fact my mast cell symptoms pretty much go when I get the right, and I'm used to this now, the right balance of cucumber, celery and flaxseed oil. Sit me on that for a day. That's my, once again, like the coconut water, electrolytes. I'm fully aware I don't get an immune response because my body goes, I know what to do. And the download I got when I healed myself, I know this might sound strange to people who haven't been on raw foods, but was that, Sky, these foods are coming in these cells, and these cells are hitting your wall, popping open, and it was like, like here, this is going to just cross like properly. Everything else you're doing is like throwing your body so dramatically that after being so sick, your body can't do anything with it. It's just stressed mast cell immune response. And I know
Yeah.
that might sound a little bit wishy-washy, but I mean, I got myself well. So
Nobody knows the body better than you. But I think, again, we don't have to use medical terms for people to relate. Actually, using these very simple examples is the best way to communicate with people, because it relates to the feeling that they have when something happens in their body. Nobody cares that we are there talking about edema. Like, actually, if you say, okay, your ankles are swelling, it could be dehydration. It could be stagnation of the lymphatic system, which is a very, very, very linked to hydration, by the way. And it could be that you have a chronic disease that we have to, like, people don't care to call it in a specific medical term. They want to know what it feels like. And if you have this swelling, it's uncomfortable to walk on. What can you do? Those are the tips. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have to talking to people where, and meeting them where they're at is just the best way. So I think when you describe how sodium will make your body feels, the hydration level go, it is quite powerful, because people can actually really imagine it and be like, yeah, I also feel off balance. That's like the first thing that comes to you. I'm off balance. And then you have the celery juice, and like, actually that goes so well in my body. I feel more in balance, right? It doesn't throw me out off.
yeah, I if I could bestow one thing on the world, it isn't even raw food. It is the fact that where I was when I healed myself is I was at rock bottom, but I could finally feel what my body was telling me, and I was getting rid of so much. You know, I was already vegan. I wasn't having much processed food. I couldn't cook the food. That I would feel all of a sudden as the transit went through my system, it wasn't hurting me, as in this may seem foreign for people, especially because I always think back to when I was very sick and very indoctrinated and just reading like why my body's feeling, take pain medication, have surgery, reading that this person knows more, is to, at some level, if you know yourself, that a bit of coconut water or even eating watermelon, something, you feel better the whole time. So we're not talking about when you take some codeine or you take an anti-inflammatory and you may get this window of relief, reprieve. I'm talking about having coconut water or celery juice or some raw food, and for the 24-hour period after, there's no dysbiosis, really. There's no,
Yeah.
which is your whole electrical system, hydration is going to be thrown out, and it may be a good way for you to signal in. But if you can it takes first off feeling one thing to feel a second thing, right? And I always think about all these different levels of illness, and if I could back then have felt that, if you're feeling that with some food, that's enough to be the first stage. You don't have to overthink it. Like, you're already getting back in touch. It's just, we've come so far away from feeling what our body is telling us and running to a doctor.
I agree.
I was doing that.
But I think we all do because we get scared.
So yeah, so on my Instagram page, somebody has said, and I'm not sure exactly where they said this, they said, great point. If you allow me to add that only soil from organic products has some sufficient minerals. I'm not sure what that means, but
Probably mentioning that the food that comes from organic soil will have the right amount of minerals that we need for hydration, for the electrolytes. I'm not going to agree 100%. I'm going to say yes, you're going to have much more nutrient dense food. I mean, even that is questionable actually, because they tested it and the difference is not always actually that clear. What's clear is the amount of pesticides, really, obviously, that is lower in organic food. But when they test the nutrients, it's really not as clear that organic is better. I'm sorry, because the soil per se is struggling. It takes a long. We have to also understand this, and because I have a project that is all about environment. I know this well. We have to regenerate the soil in order to get what we need from it eventually. Having just organic does not mean regenerative agriculture at all. The soil could be actually still quite depleted. It's just that you're not going to add on insult to injury by adding more chemicals to it. You're trying to regenerate. You're trying to basically grow things without pesticides and without herbicides, but it's not free from herbicides and pesticides, by the way. It might not use Roundup, but they do still use chemicals. That's one thing about organic people don't know often. It's just that there are levels that are allowed by the Organic Soil Association, and also it's not always free from, actually, especially in commercial organic, because you're still having to produce a certain amount. What would be free from is biologic. I guess regenerative agriculture is the only way you can do it, where you actually see the connection of different plants working together, and
like
biodynamic, and being not having to use pesticides, because like one plant could be a pesticide to a pest that is bothering the specific plant, right? For example, citronella could be a repellent for a specific bug that might be attacking a kale plant. When you use that dynamic, then yeah, you're not going to use any chemicals at all. But actually in organic you still use them. So and the soil that we're working with is still not 100%. And even though there are rules in place about where your fencing needs to be in comparison to another piece of land that perhaps uses pesticides, you still are going to be affected by the fact that there is wind, there is rain, the water goes, transports these chemicals. It's really just not perfect. So there are many benefits to organic. I love organic, and I think it is better, especially when it comes to pesticides and herbicides. But it's not perfect.
So when it comes to organic, non-organic, obviously if there's pesticides, then your body's going to buffer more, right? So you're going to get more dehydration and get damage on other levels because it is a chemical.
Just like a pharmaceutical. Yeah.
Yes, but I healed myself with non-organic in Australia. I do think Australian produce is not as chemically doused. People argue that, but this is just me going off my senses. Like when I'm in the US and I buy something from the shop and I walk down the street and eat it, like from a supermarket, it's almost like eating chemicals. Like it's almost like eating. And then when I'm in Kauai and I get something from the farmer's market, I'm like, it's very different. In Australia, to me, it doesn't feel like there's a huge difference. But I was like, I would buy organic where I could in the shopping center, but that's what I could afford. But my theory is if I start putting good things in, I'll get well enough to afford organic, and now I get
Yeah,
free biodynamic. Um, the other
which is
thing,
also hard to find. It's just so hard to find biodynamic commercially.
and it's where you are. This is a huge thing I always think about. This is what makes this so different. You can't apply one protocol, even a recipe, here and then in Spain, because
Yeah.
tomatoes have a different level of sodium, a different level of water. People like, my pasta ended up watery, and I didn't realize that in Europe, courgettes or zucchinis are quite watery and mushy. Here, they're firm as anything, right? And I know I'm talking about recipes here, but it makes me think of something that stands out to me ever since I took my first international trip, since being raw, is as much as I loved barley, the same thing happens in Thailand and America, is my system craves Sydney for minerals. We are a very new country. Our soil has not been used like other countries. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is like and this is, if you told Six Guy this, I'd be like, what? I wouldn't feel this. I feel this because people go, oh, you must love the tropical fruits you get, straight off the tree. There's some calling which drags me back because our food is really mineral rich. And I hear Europeans who move it over here are like, say the same thing. And I'm very blessed. I'm not saying I'm better than you. This is a calling my body does. It's like, because people go, would you live here? And I'm like, as much as I love all this tropicalness, and I couldn't even say just salt, it's like minerals my body can
Yeah, you
feel.
know what? That makes a lot of sense to me. But it's also, you have a smaller population, a huge country where a lot of farming is done in big spaces where really you can. In I think Australia, probably if we tested the food, they definitely would have more minerals. Now, comparing to the US is in trouble with their food supply. So I think in the US, actually buying organic might, if you can afford it, it might make a big difference. Europe, we used to be okay, but now we have we have psychopaths. Well, we always had psychopaths, but now we have extra psychopaths in the EU who are passing laws, and now GMO is allowed, and the control on pesticides and so on is just going down the drain to support the big companies and that own and run these industries. So Europe is really losing that edge when it comes to food. It used to be much better. Portugal, where I am, the thing that I think is really beneficial here is that we still have local farms. And so people still grow their own food in the backyard if they have land. I do notice a massive difference between people in the city and people in the countryside. However, in the countryside, people are really proud to grow their own kale and cabbages and tomatoes and so on. In the city, they are still quite disconnected from the process. Maybe there are, they have people that like the grandfather and the family had like a little piece of land that they grew before, but by our generation that now lives in the city, they are very disconnected from the process, which is what I'm trying to change with my project Elevate, because we need to go back to not only growing food just to grow it, but actually to regenerative agriculture, community agriculture, agroforestry. We also are, we're suffering a lot with fires. Right now, Europe is on fire. The world is on fire, but like in Europe, we're having loads of them because of the amount, like the heat wave. But what if we and by the way, talking about hydration, the soil is dehydrated, which is why we have so many floods when it rains like crazy after droughts, because the water cannot even get into the soil. Because again, going back to why it doesn't matter if it's organic or not at this point, the soil is so depleted, has been plowed so much that it forms like a crust and the water cannot get in. So the trees are dry. I have a tree, I have many trees, I have 100 trees on my farm, but one of the trees was so dehydrated that the fruit was growing, but it was like a shell. Inside it was dry.
And that's
Figs.
like lost
Figs
that
are so
we've lost that like ability that we're supposed to connect with nature and know that. And I
yeah.
can't remember, I was doing a podcast with Amy, and I was talking about how a lot of the fruit and vegetables are shaped like different organs, and I believe
Yeah.
things are supposed to be that simple. But listening to what you're saying is the person that you should speak to about this is Anne Osborne. You might have already spoken
Mm.
to her, because she moved to Australia not because the fruit's good. She's all soil. She's everything that she chooses to do, live, buy, look after her health and her family is soil based. And she reminds me of you actually. She's very like really smart, really switched on. It's interesting, right? She's not like I'm moving here because the fruit was tested. She did a huge talk a few years ago at the California Fruit Festival and on all of this. And I find that really interesting that a long-term fruitarian has based their diet and stayed healthy on only fruit based on the soil, not the fruit. So that's, I think, something interesting there. I did also want to say we were talking before about modern medicine and about how we put, a lot of faith in. We go there. There's these emergencies, the frozen shoulder with hormones, whatever you're going to the doctor for. The thing that was really apparent to me is 50 years from now, what we know as modern medicine will more likely be poison, wrong, incorrect, and out of date. But if you think about, I was also thinking over the weekend that if you think about old wives' tales, not all of them are right, but there's some level that people go back to, like, for example, the sulfur from the food, they might put some garlic or onion in their socks or on their chest, or peppermint or hot coal. These are things that I go to first now, as opposed rushing to some doctor, because in my mind I'm like, yes, I fix something acute, but more than likely it's always changing. And I had so much faith in something that wasn't even stable.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to also talk about people are going to ask, how do I hydrate? Like, what is the most hydrating foods? Do you want to start?
I mean, I think we already mentioned fruit, 100%. Right now, in Europe, as in anyway, in the northern hemisphere, uh, melons are in season. Watermelon is amazing for hydration. Coconut water, amazing. Now I know not we cannot all get fresh coconut. I get it. But you can buy coconut in cartons that is just coconut water. That's still valid. However, if you can get proper coconuts, then enjoy. Um, all fruits, really, all fruits, and then the veggies. So, if anything, and by the way, you can also we do that with water. Something that really helps when you feel dehydrated, when you have swollen legs, even in the morning. You get to 500 milliliters to a liter of water with a little pinch of sea salt.
Yes.
That sea salt makes a massive difference. That's the hydrating edge, not just the water.
Yeah. When it comes to food, I really feel that, because I'm very intuitive with what I eat, I really feel that any calling I've had on my whole raw journey, which is 5 years now, has been electrolyte hydration driven. But it doesn't mean that one form of hydration will always keep your body in balance and healing. And a good example is when I went through my watermelon stage. So I found the raw foods, they're hydrating. I didn't have nuts or seeds or spice or salt and pepper even for a period. I ended up in trouble with the salt I've spoken about. But for example, is before I found out I had a sodium deficiency, I did a huge amount of watermelon. And I was having a lot of symptoms, like as in like, as time went on, I was finding I was getting weaker. The sodium imbalance was getting worse. Now, you would think watermelon is one of the most hydrating foods, but it comes with sugar. And if you keep pumping sugar, even potassium through without keeping your electrolytes in balance, you will lose a lot of water. Your kidneys will, or hold on. So it's without saying that cucumber, watermelon, coconut water, I even find green lemon ginger blast, and I also find omega-3 fats. If I don't have them in, I get very dry and I just can't regulate.
That's a
If
very important for hydration, actually. Yes.
if you are having a lot of watermelon and you're craving salt and you can't even have salt, don't push that you need to push through to get through something. Have some cucumber, have some cucumber test, because my body has hydrated at different times in different ways. But yeah, I notice, and I was talking earlier about Dr. Brooke Goldner and her talking about building the cells from omega-3s and getting that correct communication, which essentially is these gated channels in proteins along the outside of a cell, which will.
Yeah, because cells have a hydrophilic and hydrophobic layer. So to keep things in balance so that you can get some nutrients in, but you can also get hydration in. And you need to kind of keep the membrane hydrated and supple. So you definitely need essential fatty acids, you need protein, amino acids, and you need, a good amount of minerals for hydration. 100%. She's correct with that.
Um, what is interesting, just on talking on hydration and gut health, is just thinking of her protocol, because it is quite heavy. For people new to it, it probably isn't. But I notice if I overeat and I don't have a stomach or top of intestine, so I'm extremely sensitive, is my whole system locks up and dries out because nothing is moving and nothing is coming now new through the, especially the lower bowel, where you get a lot of that uh, electrolyte balance from. I mean, you need the nutrients from the small intestines. You're broken down, small intestines nutrients, but that hydration, if that locks up, so it is about listening to your body, feeling the balance, to help yourself get well, even if you are on medications.
100%. I also want to say, when we say consuming certain foods, I am not talking about monomealing here or having cleanses, okay? We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about a diet that is rich in different elements that are per se hydrating and can offer you what you need as a whole. It's not just one food. So if you have watermelon, I mean, unless you're doing a cleanse for a specific reason, where you're doing it with watermelon, and I don't think everybody should do it. I'm very much outspoken about. I see too much hype on internet about people just going on crazy cleanses when they actually don't need it, and people that are making money promoting these things when people don't need it. It could get them worse, especially women, especially again with our hormones. But when I speak about this food, I'm really talking about implementing them as part of our routine, right? So that you can get all the nutrients that come from different things, not just from one thing. So, but I also like what you said about, if you're doing a protocol and there is only one group food fruit in this case that you're doing, and you're not feeling like you are like you're supposed to be, which is the energetic and I mean, I know there are healing crises where you could feel like crap for a couple of days, yes, to a week, but um, overall you should feel pretty good. If you don't, then maybe adding that, say, cucumber might be the difference between not feeling great and actually switching over to the other side. So, but that kind of agency, Sky, takes a lot of self-awareness. You are so highly aware of your body because you've been through so much, and people that have been through a lot of issues, whether it's health issues, eating disorders, whatever it is, they tend to feel their body more than the general person who is completely disconnected from how they actually feel, you
Yeah.
know?
I think what I see very common in the community, and it's no fault on the people doing it, it's just they haven't felt well in a long period of time. And I've experienced this as well, where you go raw and you're aware that the more watery foods, especially where I'd come from, instantly I'm starting to feel so good. The more watery foods I put in, the better I feel. And it's very common, especially this time of the year, to see people who have chronic illness to be basically living off watermelon and watermelon juice, because it's the only thing that makes them feel good. But then we can, you have life going on, you have work, and then it almost becomes drug like, in that it's the only thing that's making you feel good. And we can start to not feel good because we need cucumber, we need a bit of sea salt, we need a bit of balance, a bit of greens, and you feel dehydrated, so you drink more. That's the caveat to when you have you have dehydration, from overhydration, is whether the kidneys, this has happened from too much sugar or too much salt, is you will want more water and more water and get yourself in more trouble. So it's like, that's why I said I feel like with hydration, it's not about H2O or even sodium, it's about balance and balance.
I agree. I completely agree with this.
All right, so is there anything we didn't cover today on hydration?
That is actually one last part, because I think one important thing, we talked about the microbiome. Let's actually talk about digestion and why water is important, hydration is important for bowel movement. A lot of people that are dehydrated will find themselves being constipated. Now, guys, if anything comes into your body, it's got to go out. And so, if you are not pooping every day, there is a problem. Now, I know some people have a slower motility, and so it could take 2 days, and that's still seen as normal. I personally prefer when people poop every day. But if you're not hydrating your body, you're going to struggle. That's where constipation comes from. Then constipation can also be like actually highlighted through diarrhea, for example. And people think that diarrhea means they are hydrated enough, and that's not the case. When you get a bout of diarrhea after being constipated, what happens is that your body is trying to pull water into the gut, and then there is a pressure that builds, and that's why you go to the bathroom and you have diarrhea. But in that diarrhea, you will also have a lot of dry stools. So diarrhea does not mean that you are actually well hydrated. On top of it, when you do have diarrhea, you are going to be dehydrating more. So it is important to understand that hydration and the gut health are incredibly linked, you know.
There is something I do want to bring up because I know people will probably either comment on it after. I'm surprised nobody has. What is your take on the structured water? This, yeah, with what you know, being high raw and being a doctor, basic, a naturopathic doctor, what's your take on structured water?
For me, structured water is from vegetables and fruit. That's the structured water that I believe we should be having, because again, like I said at the beginning, it comes structured together with everything. There are machines that do structured water. Do they work? I don't know. If I have to tell you that I've seen, I haven't. I mean, I think there's evidence for everything. I don't. Let's just put it this way: I would not tell somebody to invest in it, just to invest in it and spend money on it, when you can actually get structured water from fruit and veggies. Okay.
So, structured water is H3O2. That's correct. The structure of it. So there's a channel, because I went down when I first went raw down this. I was talking about this on the weekend about how I didn't feel chemistry, physics, biochem, they're all still compartmentalized. I started to feel like electricity. Dr. Moore's talking about electricity, and why is it you can give me the exact same electrolytes in a glass chemically made versus this idea that the water is structured straight from plants, and you give me celery juice, I will get better off celery juice and sicker off the other. So there's a channel called the Electric Universe, and it is, I think it's electrical engineering based. These guys are not scientists, right? But they took structured water. Don't think from plants. They put up the experiment, and what they found, and this kind of makes sense that plants are living and what would happen, is the water, when it placed into another container from where it has been, will act very similar, and it creates like that hydrophilic area, almost like a cell.
It does. It does go. It does. It does.
I found that, like, to me, that makes, because there's two levels here where you can talk medically, chemically, or you can talk moving into spiritual and plants. There's that. And
But I think even chemically, hydrogen water, yes, it has. It's like almost like, imagine water and then hydrogen water being thinner. Okay, but I'm always thinking about people's availability of it, right? Accessibility to it. It's so important because, I mean, you want to, if you wanted to be like Brian Johnson, you would get everything, try everything, and we don't all have 2 million a year to spend on our health, right? So Um, Hydrogen water machines are very expensive. Now they have the bottles, but even for the bottle, it's an investment. I think for a lot of the people that we are talking to on online, their investment should go into what they're feeding themselves with every day, because they're gonna have to eat, and that's very important. Is the most important thing. So although yes, there is some research on hydrogen water that I actually really like, I have seen it tastes different. It it definitely, you feel more hydrated, that is true.
They're two different things, right? Hydrogen water is the hydrogen molecules suspended
But
in
that's what they call, I think that's what they call structured water.
H2O, and structured water,
Ex-
as far as I'm aware in this community, is actually, there's a chemically, the water is actually structured and bonded differently. One is a suspension, one is chemically different to
I
the
thought
other.
okay, what I learned as structured water is hydrogen water. Structured as in it's got the structure of the H2O. Sorry, H2. Um,
So because
interesting.
the idea is that we're deficient in hydrogen, so suspending hydrogen in water is going to hydrate. But
Yeah,
I
but
think you're right. And from my experience is, if you take the structured, this is what I believe, structured water in plants, it has some memory in it, which you infuse, and this is a, not scientific, this is what it feels like for me, that there's
okay.
some sort of consciousness memory that my body needs to reboot. Like, as I said, you can't give me a packet of hydration, even if it's the same chemical component, in standard uh, water. I need plant water. Um, and that's what hydrates me. And I'm very blessed to have found it. But I do want to also put out there before we go is, everybody listening, including myself, at some level is dehydrated. Like, we are, it's just the way the planet is, that, we can always work on. I feel like that's all I've done. My regeneration is this long period of how to rehydrate. And you can see it. I looked dry, dead, my hair was dry and dead. And then raw foods, watery foods, finding a balance. I feel like I've come back. You've like rehydrated a corpse.
That's funny. Sorry, I was just checking what
I'm
people
just,
mean as the difference. Okay, the difference I found online is exactly what I was saying. Like for me, like what I learned anyway, the structured water is structured. I mean, I don't know if they do it. If they, I never looked into it outside the plant world. That's the structured water is from plants. Like it comes with a structure. Hydrogen water, yeah. So they're both very hydrating. That's why I was saying at the beginning, a structured water from plants. To me makes a lot of sense. And then hydrogen water could be an add-on, but it's so expensive that I
yeah.
feel is not something I would say to people, you have to have it. In fact, just move to the hydration coming from plants. And if we call that structured water, then yeah, have that, because that will have everything. It has a structure. I mean, when you look at when you look at the benefits, even when you look at the shapes of plants, like you see this Fibonacci
Yeah.
sequence, like you can actually, yeah, we can go into the spiritual, but you see all these beautiful patterns, which is an amazing way to say everything is coming together in the right position, in the right structure.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, this is why I love juicing. This is why, even if you don't have to do a juice cleanse, but if you have a green juice every day, I mean, you're on a winning horse here. This is why we love Nama, because they've actually created something that is a great investment that we can use every day, that is easy to, I mean, it's the only machine that has 15 years of warranty, so you can juice until the cows come home. Um, and it's an amazing way to really bring more hydration into your body, and
I
retain the nutrients.
I've had both. So I had the hydrogen water bottle, and I also had the structured water. Nothing made by man comes even close. Like, even to me, they're not. To me, they're not even in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
One is this is my personal experience, dead and secondhand. And yes, a
Yeah.
few extra hydrogen cells may help my body. But if I want to get out of it, and if you follow me, you know, I'm like, guys, another day on celery juice, cucumber, and flaxseed oil, and I'll be out in a second. And as you said, I have been through a lot, so I feel a lot. It used to be coconut water, but I've shifted across to minerals and omega-3s and life force for me.
Life force, and I like that. So that's the other thing, like, yeah, you know, and hydrogen, again, if hydrogen water was more accessible, if the bottles and the machines were more accessible, I would say what a great investment, really. um with structured water, yeah, fruits and veggies, you can't actually, there is, in the science community, there's not even like an accepted definition or standard of how you can be measure, or you can measure structured water. So I don't know, I mean, it's a hard one because I guess I don't trust anybody that comes up with these things sometimes, because they all, sometimes there are some grifters out there and they take advantage of the wellness industry, and it becomes very tricky. So I always bring it back to basics, for that reason.
So I do want to cover a couple comments quickly here. One is someone said, how much water should we drink? So medically, it's 2 to 3 liters, and my doctor says if you start going over 3 liters constantly, you'll really push your kidneys long term.
Yes.
And then somebody underneath has also said, so you don't drink water, do you get your water from fruit and veggies? I will warn, I feel like I didn't drink water really at all for a couple of years, and I feel like
It was a
like
mistake.
it's like you are, because the electrical input in these foods is so high. As I said, if I keep doing watermelon, my whole system go. If I keep doing celery, and if you create, like, I just think it's a really slippery slope to not have water.
No, I think it's very important to drink as well. I don't believe just eating raw food would be enough. Especially if we are, let's go by the definition that 2 liters of fluids per day. And by the way, you can drink herbal teas, okay? And that will classify as hydration as long as there is no sugar or almond milk or whatever in it. So if you have to drink 2 liters of fluid per day for good hydration, you would have to eat so much produce. I mean, of course, with the exception of watermelon, which is 90% water, but again, the nuisance that we talked about before, let's just say that's not the only thing you're going to eat anyway, right? So you can have an abundance of fruit, an abundance of veggies. You are going to get hydrated, but you still need the water.
Yes. So have water, guys. Okay. Have we covered everything?
I think so.
I think so too. So, all right. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
sleep,
you.
Chantel, and thanks everyone for joining.
I will. I'm exhausted.
I'm
I'm
getting
barely
going.
sleeping.
You're like winding down.
You get going.
We do a shift change as it comes on, right? I wake
We
up.
totally do. That's so funny because our messages are always like either in the morning or at night, like before we go, we change the guard.
We do a shift change. All right. Thanks again, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.